I'm going to do a technique comparison here between swales, which is very popularized, and people have seen a lot of that on the internet, I think, and keyline, which is not as much popularized, okay? Doesn't mean it's not a good one. So this is Bill Mullison's master plan drawing of his farm, and that's the view from his house of the paddock that's outside of his home. So he may have wanted to maintain the view, so he didn't put trees on his swales because he liked that view. If he had put trees, he wouldn't have a view, he'd just be seeing trees. Equally, in Bill's plan, it's a very large farm, he also has cows. So if he was to put up trees, it would block and shade and lower the production of the grasses. So he had cows, sheep, goats, different animal systems. So he had quite a diverse animal systems on his farm. And so that at that point, I don't see any cows in the picture, but they would be utilizing the grass for herbivores. So what is a swale? A swale is a widely spaced, uncompacted ditch on contour that are placed to intercept, overland, and infiltrate runoff and groundwater recharge. So the very steep slope, water comes down, hits the speed bump, soaks in. Next level, hits the speed bump, soaks in. Very simple. The best applications for this are in forestry systems. So typically people will put trees on this. And the best application is on a hillside, a very steep hillside that had been cut of trees. So it was a forest in the past. We want to go back and make a new forest. I want to regenerate the forest. If I put swales, then I can get the tree line to establish, right? And then I can walk the trees down the hill and reestablish the forest. Because what happens is all the water just runs off. It eroded all the topsoil. It's very difficult to restart the trees. So the best applications are in forestry, in rainfall dominant regions and arid drylands, places where we don't get a lot of rain. So it might like only rain in one season and this season's really dry. So if I don't do some type of water harvesting, the trees won't survive, okay? And so cost of doing this are anywhere from like $200 maybe here in Thailand up to like $1,500 a kilometer if I was like in Australia. So it varies up to the labor, equipment charges in your application. So relatively expensive. Keyline design is different. Keyline design, pattern subsoiling, and mounding. So this is called non-invasive cultivation using ridge tine aerating subsoil plows affected in a pattern that reduces runoff or moves surplus from foothill valleys to their adjacent ridges. So I like to think about this as like really micro swales. So they're going to come in and they're going to cut that blade and it's going to push like a knife cut into the ground. So when the water drains, it goes in. That allows aeration and water, and that facilitates the soil development. Also, you'll see that later they're going to put in seeds in the cut and also compost tea. So they put in the, and then that. Still on contour? Yes, this is on contour, always on contour. So the best applications for this are in what's called silvopastoral and forestry systems. Silvopastoral is a technique where we have, again, a forest has been removed. They put on cows or herbivores, sheep, whatever type of herbivore system. It's been there for a long period of time, probably degraded to a certain extent where it's compacted. Really difficult to start trees again. So what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll keyline that system, right? Then they'll put in these growing mounds that we'll see more details later. They'll plant the trees in, and then that will allow them to start trees. So they'll start the trees at maybe 100 meters apart, okay? And then the tree will come up. A lot of times these are nut trees. So people will then go in and say, hey, look, you've got cows. You've been doing that for a while. You get that really low price of like only $50 per freaking acre. I mean, that's not very much money. And yeah, but I don't know how to do anything else. Okay, what if I could share with you a technique that I can help you with? And I can increase you from $50 a square meter to $50 an acre to $5,000 an acre. Would you be interested to listen? Yeah, okay, I'll give you 10 minutes. All right, give me 10 minutes, thank you. And this is what Darren does. Darren goes around Australia and Brazil and America and does talks to farmers that come to listen, saying, I have a technique and I can show you how to take your cattle farm and I'll flip that over to a nut farm. Let me tell you how to do that. And we'll bring that $50 an acre up to $5,000 an acre. Are you interested? And they, yeah, people coming because they see it, okay? So, and he's probably a better salesman than I am. But at this point he says, look, what we're gonna do is you've got compaction, can't get the tree started, but if we put them at every 50 meters, every 100 meters, we'll get that pecan tree to come up, or walnut tree, or whatever nut you like, and or fruit. You can do fruit also, doesn't matter. Once that comes up, it's going to take away a little bit of light from your grass, so your cattle production may go down slightly, okay, a little bit, maybe 5 or 10%. And if you can live with a 5 or 10% loss for 3 years. Then that nut tree will start producing after 3 to 5 years, right? And it's going to make way more economic return than your cows. So once that happens, we're going to go between the 100 and we're going to put another line. Yeah, and they're going to grow up. And then after 3 years, we're going to go between that one, so that's 50 meters. We're going to put 25 meters. And after another 3 years, we're going to put 12 meters and then 6 meters. And we're going to flip the farm. We're going to have no trees, 100% cows. And we're going to flip it, right, to 90% trees, which still have a little light for grass. So that means the grass is 100%, no trees. We're going to flip it over to 90% tree cover, 10% grass. You'll go from 100 cows down to 10 cows. So you have the nut production, and then the 10 cows, what do they do under the trees? They're like lawnmowers, and they do the cycling. Yeah, so they're eating and cycling the nutrients. So their job becomes what they did in nature. Cow was basically they were under the trees, and they're recycling weeds and things like this. So that flips over in a time period, and if you have better cash flow, it can go faster, right? And if you don't, then in 20 years, we'll flip that farm, and we'll bring it into nut production. So what's going to increase? Your profit will increase, and the protein production on that property will increase, because then that nut is a perennial, it's storable, and it goes in. So if this is happening, and it is happening around the world, I'm going to show you pictures of large farms. People are not dumb. People can figure this out. The affiliation with the systems are changing. So you can be on the front end. You can be on the back end. Just where are you in life? So then we'll look at that, and it's really cheap, only $50 a hectare to run the keyline plow to get the tree started. So keyline design irrigation systems means that we take the keyline design and we integrate it with the ponds and the swales, so that once we have the water and once we keyline to aerate our soils, then we can use the water to irrigate the trees to get them started. Then we can grow the trees up and flip the farms basically. So most of what we're going to see is large cattle farms with no trees getting flipped over to become horticulture, which is fruits typically, or silvopastoral describing nuts, or agroforestry where people start to grow trees back, because some countries give subsidies to grow trees back instead of raising cows, for instance. So that's another technique called alley farming. So this is again the silvopastoral where they put the alleys in, 100 meters wide. Once it grows up, you keep putting in more tree cover, and you have less cows, more nuts, things like this. So that's pretty cheap, $600 a hectare you can put in your alley farming. How does this work? Well, this picture was taken in Australia, and this is a same day, not a drought event. So normal year to year, reasonably the same day. Took a picture that's really degraded. They came in, they keylined the property, so they decompacted the soils, and they removed the cows. So they take the cows and they say, look, you're not managing your cows properly. You need to manage them and move them each day. Just don't let them stand in the same place, and they just stand there and compact the soil, right? Then the grass can't grow back. Yeah? So at this point, you can see two properties. One on the left, they did not keyline. See how compacted it is? You can see the dirt, and it's like the water just goes in and creates erosion. And on the other side, they keylined it. It slowed the overland water flow, and the grass grows back, right? So that's the first stage, get the grasses growing back. Second stage, they come in and they mound it. We're going to see in a second what is called mounding. It doesn't have the ditch. And then they put the trees in the mound, and then they can get the trees started. So it's like first stage, second stage, and flip. And highly profitable. So how do they do that? Some permaculturists, call them cutting edge permaculturists, are building what's called a single pass application. Another big aspect of permaculture, appropriate technology. So to take a piece of equipment or technology and repurpose it to do some other form. So if we go look on farms, people have subsoilers, and people have rototillers, and people have hillers, but they use that in the commercialized, more like commercial applications with chemicalized agriculture. But if we take their equipment and we change the usage and we utilize it to get the trees started, we can flip it to that still commercialized. We obviously want to sell our product to probably more of a holistic market than the commodities market. So at this point, that's what's happening. So here we can see at first there's a cutter, a rototiller, and a hiller, and it makes a mound. So at this point, we have the swale on contour, but with no ditch, right? And then we plant the tree. It's not as big. And when it rains, the water hits the mound, and the tree grows. So that's how we use this thing to de-aerate to get the tree started. And you can see the guy there, that's from a tree planting for like planting pine trees, and then he drives on the back and he just drops this seed like doom, 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 doom. So they're doing this on tens of thousands of acres. So they come in with a team of like 4 people, and within 4 days, they planted trees on 10,000 acres. So sometimes the conditions are so bad, and this being like outback Australia, it's just so bad that they can't get the trees to grow without irrigation. So this is a tool that they use to bury a soaker pipe, so that for the maybe first 3 years, they have to give the roots, the small roots, water. After the roots get down deep enough, they can get subsoil water. But at the beginning, there's still not enough rainfall in these areas to get the trees to start. And this is a combatant to the, desertification issue. So this is that's actually a picture of Darren. He's on a course. So in Australia, particularly, they have lots of keyline courses. So if you want to learn how to do keyline, or in a more, you can go to take a course doing keyline. So this is him. He's showing you at this course, they're showing you how to use the equipment. So they actually physically go out and they use the equipment. So here we see the cutter with a seeder and then a crimper. They call this non-inversive because after you cut, the crimper crimps it back. So you really can't tell where they did it. But the water, obviously, when it's running, can find the hole, and air finds the hole. But you don't really notice where it's done. They also are doing, this is him experimenting. They say, wow, they got these really big equipment on these farms, right? What if we take their monster tractor and then we can make big key lines so we use less fuel? So we do it once and we don't have to use as much diesel because we take their big monster equipment, but just do it one time. So they call that single pass. Don't pull 3 or 4 pieces of equipment. Pull them all at one time. So it's pretty cool. This is Darren's a master plan, if you will, for a client that Darren does from Australian Felix. You can see there his it's called land planning consultancy. So he helps you. It's a big, what we might call a big cattle farm before. And then he went on and he does the layout, the irrigation layout, the ponds, the trees planting. So here we have agroforestry, what you might call food forestry, orchards, silvopastoral. So he has lots of different types of tree systems that are being put on, or proposed to be put onto this farm. The person here, guys, let's be honest about where the real world works. The real world works this way. Darren gives the master plan to the person. The person brings it to the bank. Darren gives the documentation to back up the growth rates of the trees and the production and the market, right? They get a loan. The bank gives a loan. They get a loan. They flip their property over, and in 5 years, they start paying the bank back because they are selling fruits and nuts. Fruits and nuts make more money per acre than selling beef or sheep or whatever, okay? So that's all they know how to do, and they don't know any other choice, and you go there. And so what makes this change is the earthworks. The water changes the property. The water gives them the ability to flip to a better agricultural system. Or let's say you want to grow, I don't know, lettuce. Good. Go kind of grow lettuce out in the outback with no water. Ain't going to happen. You can want to, but that's not going to change anything. So we need water. They do water harvesting. They start to change the systems. So in this instance, another big cow farm, flipped it over. This is agroforestry. So they're flipping the farm over to, again, destock the cows, increase the tree capacities. He did this with AutoCAD. So this client probably wanted a more accurate. So if you pay more, you get more accurate, right? If you don't need that, he doesn't necessarily need that accuracy in order to do the tree planting, right? So each client can pay for different things. Here's one that's called silvopastoral design, another big farm, and you can see each of the green dots represents a tree. So he's planting the trees on contour. First step, he figures out how to get water. How can I store water? Once he can store water, right, then he can plant the trees and he can irrigate the trees to get the trees to start, okay? Without the water, you can't really get the trees to grow in these environments. This is the big field station that he did in Vietnam. So he's working with the Vietnamese government to more so show them permaculture, which is called polyculture or food forest. So when we look at our food forest later and polycultures, they're working with big development. So these are really large food forests. One of these food forests might be on each plot's in the 100-acre. Okay, and then they have test plots for each of the different food forest, say, designs. And then they're growing them, measuring them, and recording the yields and how a farmer who owned that would do. So then the government would do subsidies to help the farmers to change their agricultural practices. So start off with nothing, come in with Earthworks, and you start to put in trees. So these are mixed or polyculture. So you have palms, bananas, papayas, different types of fruits. Mostly what they're trying to do is have something that has a yield each month so that the farming family is out yielding. So they may have coffee. This month I'm doing coffee. This month I'm doing papaya. And then I can bring something to the market, right, each month instead of it's all yielding and now I have to get all these people and then they don't have a job each. So I only have a job during 1 month a year because I pick mangoes, and then 11 months of the year I have no job, right? This is called remote design. Darren just looked at Google, right? Just took it like you're going to do in yours. I just have a picture of Google, and he just remotely designed this farm, and that's probably over 1,000 acres. So he looked at 1,000 acres, he read the landscape, and he proposed a agroforestry system to change what would have been a cattle farm into what we would know as a broad acre permaculture farm. This is, as I was speaking to you guys about the change that's happening in Australia, where they started to figure out by doing this system. So now we're looking at the berms, but we're looking down the hillside, not across. And so each one of those white parts is the berm, and those are olive trees planted on contour. And the grass that's between them isn't actually grass, and it's really sad that this picture wasn't at the right month, because that's lavender. So they have lavender ground cover under olive oil trees, yeah, on key-lined contour mounding. And then this farm went from a cattle farm, yeah, to olive oil, and it's organic. So at this point, it's a big shift, and what makes this available is the water harvesting. Without that berm, the water was overland and creating erosion. So slow it down, sink it in, and we can change the ecology. And most of this is because we cut down all the forest. The ecology was there before. We cut it all down, sold it all off to make houses and whatever. Now it already doesn't even exist anymore. And then we have to help the ecology to change. So this is forestry in an area where the forest was cut down. The government, particularly in Australia, has a lot of subsidies for reforestation. So this landowner can make a decision that I could basically go back into forestry and take subsidies from the government to put the forest back. So they went in and they key-lined, contour mounded, and they plant back forestry trees that then would be agreed not to be cut down. Okay, so reforestation. This is another forestry project. You can start to see the contour. So they're planting trees on contour. The contour is the water harvesting. So the contour allows the water to stay without going off, and then they plant the trees to the contour lines. The water hits the contour line, soaks in, tree can grow. This is called Forestry and Silvopastoral Research Farm. What does that mean? Darren needs to be able to show and prove that his system grows better. So he does a lot of research with people that they are measuring this growth rate. So here is would have been a cattle farm again or something like that, fields. They came in, they contoured it, so that's keylining. Then they put in the trees. Each one of those white things is actually a really cool thing to have in Australia. When they put down the tree, there's condensation tubes is what they're called. So at night, they condensate, and then the water drips to the tree. So they can help to get water, because these places are very dry, but they can get nighttime condensation, so that works. So that's why you can see the white, that each one of those white things is actually a little small seedling inside of a tube. The tube is opaque. So during the daytime, it lets in some sunlight, but not too much. And at nighttime, it condensates and waters the tree passively. Horticulture and forestry. So this farm's being laid out, and it's going to be horticulture. Horticulture being fruits and flowers. So more than likely, they're not going to grow flowers there. They're going to grow fruit trees. Now that they've contoured it, they'll come into each one of those lines and they'll plant their trees on contour, and you'll be able to, eventually this turns into some type of fruit farm. That's Darren, and he's measuring his trees, because on his website you can see the growth rates, and he's very good at this. It's more of a research passion type thing. Highly recommend, again, check him out on YouTube. He speaks, the passion comes through. And his passion's so good, he can convince people, and these are big properties, and these people are, they're not changing tens of hundreds of thousands of acres lightly. Okay, so I highly recommend you check it out. So that's the equipment that he helped to research and kind of develop with lots of other people. So the yeoman's plow is in the front with a rotor tiller and a hiller. And then when they gang those together, that cuts, turns, hills, plants the trees. So you could add onto the back the tree planter. So they drive over and plant trees. The water runs and hits the hill. There it is. So there's your little tree planter. Again, it could be on the backs without using another tractor. If you only had the keyline plow, that's what it looked like after they cut. So the water would be going this way to contour the cut. The water rains, runs down, goes in the slit. So that's why they call it non-inversive or non-invasive. It's not flipping, it's not plowing. It's just allowing aeration and water penetration. This is the hills on contour, so that's where the trees would get planted. So if that's what the shot you would have seen before they planted, like the olive trees or fruit trees or nut trees or whatever tree you'd like to plant. This is the guy that came up with almost all this, or the birth, and then it goes through to where people like Darren is more the young push, okay? He's probably 40s now, but he started into this stuff when he was 25, and by 40 he's going all over the world doing this. So P.A. Yeoman's 1908 to 1984, and he made lots of books. Check out Water for Every Farm, it's a great book. But he had lots of books. He even started to write about Priority 1, which is describing our cities and how our cities don't harvest water, they push water away, so it's from farms even to discussing how to rehydrate or the hydrology of our cities. So another really great website, that's the only one I think that I tell y'all other than David Holgram's website, but soilandhealth.org.au is an open library. The books are free. They do work on donations. It's only $5. I paid my $5, but I had probably took books from them for a while before I paid. But they're really great, and what they are is out of print, basically agricultural books that families have donated the rights to the library for you to use. So check that out. There's lots of cool books, or you can go check out yeomansplow.com, which is P.A. Yeoman's company that sells that. Check it out on YouTube.